All right, let's start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem, Rucha Kudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is, just bear with me, the transgression of the wicked saith, there is no fear of the Most High before his eyes. And pretty much this is a quote taken from Psalms, the 36th chapter, which those are we're going to read that. And this is pretty much centered around the whole situation with the so-called the capture of Maduro. You know, he appeared in court today, so they did grab him up. They grabbed his wife up. They both appeared in court. And, you know, I was watching some news, and pretty much all of these, you know, major news channels are, mostly all of them are reporting on this incident. So it got me to thinking, what is really going on behind the scenes? And this is just a smokescreen. You know, they have something going on behind the scenes, which they're not really talking about. So, you know, it would be interesting to know exactly what's really happening behind the scenes, you know, that they're using this whole Maduro situation as a smokescreen. Now, as I was watching some of the news, I watched, I think I watched Sky News, one of them, and they were bringing out how they said that Keir Starmer pretty much, you know, he condemned the actions of America. I'm just merely paraphrasing what I can remember, but one of the words that he used, that they said he used, that stood out to me was, he said, and it was shameful. So pretty much that goes back to Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, where the Lord said, "Will spew shameful spewing on your glory," and that's what we're seeing happening right now. Shameful spewing is being brought upon, you know, Esau's glory, especially here in America. Now, as I was watching, right, what they're also doing is, there was another news channel that was reporting that it would have been quicker for them to transport Noriega. It would have been quicker for them to transport Maduro by helicopter, but instead they decided to parade him through the streets, and I believe they're supposed to be going over the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, a thought came to mind, and I asked the chat. Well, actually, I asked Google first, and I went to the chat just to get their take on it. Let's just go to it. I got it pulled up right here. I said, did Roman emperors parade captured leaders publicly? And can you give me some examples? Yes, publicly parading captured enemy leaders was a well-established Roman practice. So on all levels, America is exercising all of the power of the first beast before them, which was the Roman Empire. So everything points to America being, you know, this beast here in Revelation, the 13th chapter, and everything about America mirrors what Rome is or was, right? So it says, the grand victory procession granted by the Senate to a successful general and later emperors themselves. In this case, Trump would be an emperor, you know? It says these parades were meant to demonstrate Rome's dominance, humiliate defeated enemies, and legitimize the victor's power. And that's pretty much what they're doing, because right now, Esau is losing power. How is the hammer of the whole earth broken? Let's go to that real quick. Not how is the hammer of the whole earth broken, but it's, you know, I'm quoting two different scriptures. But let's go first to Isaiah 14:4. It says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. In this case, it would be Trump. And say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. You know, so America is losing that power. Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand. The nations have drunk, and therefore the nations are mad. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. So we're seeing the total demise of America. And in their total demise, they're pretty much throwing wild haymakers, you know, hoping that something will catch, you know, so that they may have a fight, a puncher's chance. I believe that's how they call it in boxing. So they're just throwing wild, you know, wild haymakers and hoping something lands. And this is what they're doing. They're going around the world, you know, because the dollar's losing power. They're printing, overprinting of the money, and the Federal Reserve is devaluing the dollar. So they need more assets to keep up with this printing. So this is why they're going to Venezuela. And they said next they're going to go to Colombia, and other places down in Somalia, I believe it was Somalia, Nigeria, because they're trying to hit these super rich resource nations so that they can get their hands on the resources so that they can prop up the American economy. But it says the Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. But your power has been struck. Your power is waning now. You're at the waning part of your kingdom. You're not on the up and coming. Back then you were. 200 years, 250 years ago, you were on a come up. You peaked pretty much in 1944, 45, during the time of when the dollar became the world reserve currency. That's when you were really at the top of your game. And prior to that, you had a good run during the 20s, and in the 30s you fell a little bit. And then the 40s, 50s, 60s, you started to come back up. And now we're in your waning years. So the Lord has broken your staff. Your staff represents your power. The scepter of the rulers represents your rulership. So you're on a downward spiral. And when you're totally destroyed and annihilated, it's going to be said, how is the hammer of the whole earth broken? I believe that song, Jeremiah, got all kind of stuff going through my head right now. Okay, that's not it. Let's go to the 50th chapter. And the Salakio, the 23rd verse, Jeremiah 50:23. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? And that's eventually what's coming. But it's a slow spiral. Right now, we're seeing their demise. It's a slow spiral. And they're falling apart. They're crashing. Okay. Let me see, of the earth cut asunder. Let's see what cut asunder is. Gadai, to cut, hew, chop, cut down. So you're being cut down. You're being chopped down. And eventually you will be totally annihilated. So going back to this, right? It says these parades were meant to demonstrate Rome's dominance, humiliate defeated enemies, and legitimize the victor's power. And that's pretty much what they're doing, trying to show that they still have control of the world. But the nations, the ones that are really astute, they're seeing the fall of America. They're not falling for it. But to the average people out there, they don't really see the bigger picture. And I believe this whole Maduro thing is pretty much just a smokescreen to something else that's going on behind the scenes, because all of a sudden everybody's talking about it. And then usually when there's something in the news like that, there's something else going on behind the scenes. It says how it worked in triumph, the procession typically included spoils of war and captives. In this case, spoils of war was what? The oil and the gold reserves down there. And what captives? Who's the captives? You have Maduro and his wife, which would be the president and the first lady of Nicaragua, right? Painted scenes of battles and conquered cities, right? Because this. Don't be surprised if Time magazine puts out an article, Trump, and the whatever Navy SEALs or whoever went down there captures Maduro, and have all kind of pictures like they had Bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, videos of it, and and different news articles and paintings about it. It says captured kings or rebel leaders, often in chains. In this case, you have Maduro in court. I'm not sure if they brought him in there chained up, but he had, I believe he had the orange jumpsuit, and I believe he had either a black or a blue top. One source said blue, the other one said black. The triumphator, general / emperor, riding in a chariot to the temple of Jupiter. So don't be surprised if Trump, if he makes a big ado about this, and they even make a statue or painting of this. It says, after the parade, prominent captives were often executed or imprisoned for life. And they were saying with Maduro that, he, now that he's here, he's no longer the president, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And he said he could be there and he could be imprisoned for life, So it gives notable examples: Vercingetorix, Gaelic Wars, Jugurtha, Numidia, Perseus of Macedon. So these were these were rulers, notable rulers, in those regions back then, in Gaul, France, and those areas. That when they were captured, they were paraded. So he was captured by Julius Caesar. You know, he was executed. He was captured under Gaius Marius, Republican era, 104 BC. That came later. Perseus of Macedon, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, 167 BCE. That goes before. Zenobia of Palmyra. Let me see. Oh no, this goes back, BC. 274 CE. This goes into the future. All right. Decebalus. This was, this is Jake. These are Jakes that had these individuals in pretty much following in the footsteps of the pagan Roman Empire. It says, so that was pretty much it. I just wanted to get to that. So let me go and read this real quick. Revelation 13:11, and read a couple of verses here, and then we're going to go back. And I want to touch on a few things that I was speaking to chat about over the last couple of days, and hopefully the lesson will be edifying. So Revelation 13:11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. This other beast is the same beast coming back, but not in the same region or same area. It was in another part of the world, which would be the uttermost part of the world, which are over here in America. And it had two horns like a lamb. This is your two-party system or your bipartisan system, which is the same thing that Rome had. They had the Senate House. Everything that America does is like Rome, from the finances to the devaluing of the money to the military being spread too thin all over the planet, to their the Congress, the way they set it up. It says, and he spake as a dragon, and this is a representation of their legislation, what you're seeing speaking, and they don't follow the laws, and they don't follow international laws, and they're pretty much, pissing off their so-called European allies, because according to the reports, Keir Starmer, denounced what Trump did, and called it shameful. Shameful spewing on thy glory, which shows you that when Habakkuk, the second chapter, that prophecy is speaking directly about Esau, but still speaking about here in America. It says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him. The first beast before him was the Roman Empire. Here, exercises, right? When you look up that word exercises, the word there is poieo, right? And poieo is to make, with the names of things made, to produce, construct, form, fashion. So they're fashioning themselves to, or they're exercising, or they're doing the same things that they did before. All right, to produce, right? They're producing or exercising the same things that they did before. So like for a minute, I gotta check this oven real quick. Yeah, so lucky for that. Oh, so they're exercising the same power of the beast before them, which is the Roman Empire. And if you are not, somebody that's a half to it, and even if you are, you can't deny, that America operates just like the ancient Roman Empire, especially if you study Roman history, especially during the time of the 12 Caesars, from Julius all the way to Domitian. All right? To be the authors of a thing. Okay, so pretty much what they're doing is they're just taking over everybody's resources. So it says, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, which is the Roman Empire, whose deadly wound was healed. When was the deadly wound healed? During the time of the Renaissance period. And those of you that have been watching, we've gone over this history over and over and over again, because it's very important to prophecy. And for the newer members out there, that don't know, then now you know. And you can watch other videos that brothers have done. I know that Elder Yashawamba has done extensive videos, talking about in-depth videos on the different key points of how the American Empire modeled itself around ancient Rome. And then when you go to, even if you look up the founding forefathers model America after Rome, it's going to tell you yes, unless they change all that information, which they have been doing. And there's many, many other parallels, inside joke, to show that America is acting, behaving, conducting, and exercising all of the power of Rome. All right. So America would be like the modern day Rome, the modern day capital. And all of those different European countries are the allies that used to be allied with Rome back in the past. It's just in modern times. So I'm going to go back here to this document I got here, right? Believe it was either yesterday or the day before. I typed in, what is the Monroe Doctrine in simple terms? Because when you study the Monroe Doctrine, from the understanding that I got of it, is that the Monroe Doctrine was set up by President Monroe so that it would stop further your so-called European expansion into the Americas and down from America, Canada, all of that. It was meant to stop them, but they also used it to conquer the lands over here, and on this side of the world. So they said they're gonna stop the Europeans from coming over here, but they're gonna use it now to conquer the rest of these lands out here and the resources. So it says, in simple terms, the Monroe Doctrine was a U.S. policy announced in 1823 that said Europe should stay out of the Americas, and the U.S. would stay out of Europe's affairs. More plainly, the United States warned European countries not to try to colonize or interfere in North or South America anymore. If they did, the U.S. would see it as a threat. In return, the U.S. promised not to meddle in European wars or politics. At the time, many countries in Latin America, short answer, not officially. Oh, so some got cut off here. Wait a minute. Something got cut off here. Just bear with me. Oh, shit. They got cut off. Yeah. They got cut off. At the time, many countries in Latin America, and then what happened, this other thing here kind of got mixed in with it, which goes into it goes into the next question that I asked. So I'm gonna have to jump from there. So you get a gist or idea of what it is. You can look it up yourself. So the next question I asked is the Monroe Doctrine used by America to colonize countries in South, Central America, and Mexico? Short answer, not officially, but it was often used to justify U.S. control and intervention in the region because it was meant to stop Europe, but nothing in there said America, could be stopped. So it says, here's a clear breakdown. What the Monroe Doctrine said, it did not call for colonization. It said European powers should not colonize or interfere in the Americas. It framed the U.S. as a protector of the Western Hemisphere. How it was used in practice over time, the U.S. reinterpreted the Monroe Doctrine to support its own actions. See? So they pushed the Europeans away so that they can use it to support their own actions. And in the case right now, going down into Venezuela, wasn't it? I said Nicaragua earlier. I meant to say Venezuela, where President Maduro was the president, and pretty much this is their justification for it, to just roll up in there, take them out against international law, imprison them, and put in a puppet leader in there that's going to get them the all of the resources that they want, because the small hats want that. And there's no coincidence that they're in regions of the world that have great natural resources, because the American empire is faltering and they're trying to prop it up with these different resources to back the dollar up with, because they're running out of assets. And this is what happens when you have a country with world reserve status, world reserve currency status, that promises to back it up and to keep it stable. You have to constantly have money and resources coming in so that you can provide these promises to all of these different nations. That's why you had nations out there that said, look, they'd rather have stability than yield. Yield is when you get a kickback on your capital in whatever you invested on. They'd rather have the stability than just to get a kickback. It says the U.S. intervened militarily in countries in Central America, the Caribbean, and Mexico. It overthrew or influenced governments. It controlled economies and politics without formal colonization. This was especially clear after the Roosevelt Corollary 1904, which said the U.S. could act as an international police power in Latin America to prevent European involvement. See, so they kick Europe out so that they can get in. And back then, the South America, Central America, they were on the side of America because America, was giving them a fair shake. And they were tired of the imperial rule of the European nations. But unbeknownst to them, America would do the same shit once they got in power. And it's been the same story over and over again, just different times and different players. Matter of fact, let me get this one real quick. We all know, but let's get it. Habakkuk 2:5, yea, also because he transgressed by one. And we've been going over this a lot because these are the times that we're in. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. See, so he doesn't keep at home. And he is proud. They were talking about somebody getting a bounty, a price or something like that for Maduro's head. And he said, nobody should get it. No, it belongs to the U.S. Nobody's how do you say it? Nobody's qualified or good enough to get it or something like that. Only the U.S., something along those lines, which shows you that he's greedy. These devils are greedy. The scriptures don't lie. Neither keep it at home, and they do not keep at home. This is why they're all over the world. This is why you have all these different, events going on worldwide. And when they can't get in there, they cause something to happen so that they can say, well, look, these leaders are acting messed up towards their citizens. We got to go in there and help these citizens, Then they'll demonize the leaders here in the American media and say, yeah, get them. Like you have these stupid Edomites talking about, yeah, they finally got Maduro, that dictator. You dumb fuck. You devils that have lived with such Edomite privilege, I'll say it that way, that you really buy this bullshit. You really believe that all of this that's happening is really real. And you really bought this whole bullshit that they sold you, you dumb fucks. And meanwhile, you're catching hell. You know, you're at a dead end job. You know, you could barely pay your bills, but they got Maduro, that dictator, and you ain't getting shit out of the deal. It says, who enlarges his desire as hell, right? And that's what he's done. Their desire is what? To get the whole world, gain the whole world. And Isaac told Esau that he's going to live by his sword. He's going to have the fatness of the earth. And by thy sword shalt thou live. And what did Yahweh said? If you live by your sword, you shall die by your sword. And is as death and cannot be satisfied, but gathered from him all nations. And this is what he's doing. And he's targeting nations on a planet that have natural resources and demonizing them and causing them and provoking them to war, so that they can make a move, and then America could just come in there, sweep up and clean out, because they still have a military that's the most powerful military on the planet. But the problem is that resource-wise, money-wise, they're running out of it. So just like Rome, and Rome had to keep devaluing their currency to what? To be able to pay all of those soldiers. And eventually those soldiers got tired because they were getting shafted. And unlike today, those soldiers back then, they did everything. They didn't just go to war. They didn't just go on the battlefield front line. They had to build up infrastructures. They had to build the Appian Way. They had to build, defenses. They had to build, siege walls, cut down trees. They had to do all of that shit. And they got tired because, they wasn't getting paid what they were promised. And heapeth unto him all people. This is your one world order, new world order. And that's why in the back of the dollar bill it says what? A new coeptis, announcing or our enterprise has been crowned with success. And then what's its success? On the bottom, it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages or the new order of the world. And then why was that put on there? Because through America, they plan on conquering the whole entire planet. And this is why in 1913, they set up the Federal Reserve System, which had the US dollar, which made people believe that it was a governmental agency, which it's not. And then through the Federal Reserve System, they were able to conquer the world. Because during World War II, or after World War II, Europe was devastated. They were devastated during after World War I, and then they were I'm not sure if that was World War I or World War II, where they had the Marshall Plan, where America gave them money to build up their infrastructure. I'm not sure I think that was World War II, and then after World War II, they were devastated. So all of that money that was lent to them, they pretty much were cooked. In America, it said that America was unscathed by all of that. And the scripture that came to mind was Isaiah 47. How, come and sit on the ground, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Because America has never really been touched by a major war like that. You've had skirmishes and wars on the shores of America. You had so-called Pearl Harbor. You had the Civil War. You had the War of Independence, all this other stuff. But you never had a major war like you had over there in Europe, World War I, World War II. But World War III is coming. It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him and say, woe to him that increases that which is not his? Yeah, and you increase that which is not yours. And you use laws to justify your wickedness. Let's go to Isaiah 10 and 1. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees and that write grievances which they have prescribed. Right. These laws that you've written or prescribed are grievous to the people because they're not getting a fair shake. You're the only one that's making out of this deal. And really, not even you. It's really the small hats. You're getting crumbs. The small hats are getting everything else. So it says, how long? Until the Lord brings them down. And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. So they're in so much debt that they're desperate to get these resources from these different regions of the earth that are rich in soil and oil and mineral resources. All right, so let's go back here. So it says colonization versus control. The U.S. rarely colonized outright, with some exceptions like Puerto Rico. Instead, it practiced informal empire, military occupations, economic dominance, political influence, right? And then that's how they got it. And it was all through deception. Many Latin American countries view the Monroe Doctrine as a cover for U.S. imperialism. That's exactly what it is. Because they pushed out the European nations, said, we're not going to interfere over there, don't interfere over here. But it never said that America wasn't going to interfere over here. In one sentence, the Monroe Doctrine wasn't to colonize Latin America, but it was often used to justify U.S. intervention and dominance in the region. So next thing I typed in, which is today, I thought about this today, what is an economic hitman? An economic hitman is a term used to describe someone who is accused of manipulating a country's economy for political or corporate gain. And that's exactly what they do. You had an individual that came out, and I believe they brought out his name in here, John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, right? And it says, usually on behalf of powerful governments, banks, or corporations, which is America. In simple terms, an economic hitman pressures or convinces poorer countries to take on massive loans through what? The IMF, International Monetary Fund, and they give out exorbitant loans because they know that those smaller countries need the money, they're desperate for the money, and they can't pay the money back. So what has to happen? If you take on the loan, you have to have collateral. And what's your collateral? Your land, your resources, and eventually the people. And projects that benefit outsiders, even if it harms the country long term. Oh man, there was a video I was watching earlier. What they are said to do, according to critics and whistleblowers, most famously John Perkins, push huge infrastructure loans, dams, power plants, highways. Loans are given by institutions tied to wealthy countries. Money often goes to foreign contractors, not the local population. The country is left with crushing debt. In return, the country may be pressured to give access to natural resources, as we've been telling you, oil, minerals, right? Support certain foreign policies, allow military bases or corporate control. And that's how these devils get in there. They don't outright colonize, but they indirectly colonize through what? Debt. This is what the devil does. All right. Matter of fact, God damn. Let's see. All right. Let's go to history. Let's go, where is it? This one here.
The number one hair
Let's bear with me. All right, now, this individual here, John Mearsheimer, around the 5-minute mark or so, he pretty much been saying what we've been saying. So let me know if you can hear. I'm about to play it.
IMF, not as a neutral financial institution, but as a tool of Western geopolitics, left a permanent mark on Russian strategic thinking. An entire generation of Russian leaders came to view the IMF not as a neutral financial institution, but as a tool of Western geopolitical control.
That's it, a tool of Western geopolitical control. And that's how they were able to, colonize these different countries unbeknownst to them, in the guise of helping, right? Matter of fact, Salakia, I'm gonna have to get this precept. What is that? I haven't gone to this in a while. Is that the 12th chapter, Ecclesiastes 12? Yes, Barakateh Hashem Shai. It says, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness. Yeah, so they're going to play. It says, though he come crouching onto you. Oh, right there. Though he humble himself and go crouching, Yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped the looking glass. You got to keep an eye on that devil, because that devil is treacherous, man. You know, he'll get you every time. It says, and thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away. Right, because eventually it's going to show. Just like if you paint over rust, eventually what's going to happen? The rust is going to seep through somehow, some way. This devil will put on a cloak, a cheap veneer of a good guy, and eventually the cracks are going to start showing. You know, the rust is going to come through, that wickedness is going to come through, and then they're going to show you their true colors. And when do they show you their true colors? When you're already in a situation where you can't get out of. Like right now, the international bankers are not concerned with secrecy anymore. This is why they're coming straight out. And we tell you years ago through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai that these devils are going to let the horns come out. Well, you're witnessing the horns of this devil coming out, and they're not hiding it anymore. They already got everything in place that they want. There's nothing anyone can do to stop him. These protests ain't going to do shit. They've never done shit, and they ain't going to do shit. And now they're saying that if you protest against, you know, if you're an anti-ICE individual, that they could charge you with domestic to terrorism. So this is what's going to cause people to rebel here in America. It's going to push people in the corner. They're just going to snap. I was watching the elder Quanawath out there in the Bay Area, the second in command in the San Francisco camp, and he was going into that earlier. What was it he said? Damn, there was something he had mentioned that came to mind that just kind of slipped my mind that quick. It was a short video I was watching earlier. He did. I think it was about 15 minutes long, but it was very impactful. Yeah. Oh, that out there in San Fran, on California now, the judges are saying that open carry is not illegal for them to do, because you know in the law out there, if you open carry, or if you have a piece on you, you could be charged with with a felony, or you could be arrested. So the judge came on and said, no, that's unlawful. So now there's talks on reversing that law. So that's going to put weapons in the hands of people that they can carry around, And you know what's going to happen? Shit going to get wild, because it's about to get wild out here. It's 2026, the year of apostasy, agents, and sellouts. And Lord's will, all hell breaking loose. Jacob's trouble is going to be in full bloom. It's in there right now, but it's just kind of like it's happening, but it's still kind of like a little dormant. It's still like a little bottlenecked. Pretty soon it's just going to snap. Set him not by thee, least when he overthrow thee, when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. And this is what they're doing. They get in goody with the leaders of that country, and then turn around and stab him right in the back. It says, neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, and thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith. Yeah, because you're going to find out that the devil is the devil. Who will pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent, or any such that has come nigh wild beasts, like these stupid Edomites that come by near these wild animals, and the wild animals gore them or bite them or trample them or kill them, and then they wonder, well, why did he do that? It's a beast, dickhead. These Edomites are the stupidest people on the planet. But yet they claim to be the wisest. They claim to be the most astute, the most, you're astute for wickedness, the most intelligent. You're the basis of men. You're the dumbest, stupidest people on the planet Earth. You dumb, stupid, hammerhead devils. So let's go back to this fair use. This is just used for educational purposes. I'm not making any money off of this content, and I don't own the rights or copyrights to this content.
They saw how the same patterns played out in Asia, IMF, not as their savings evaporate, their industries collapse, and their nation humiliated. That experience left a permanent mark on Russian strategic thinking. An entire generation of Russian leaders came to view the IMF not as a neutral financial institution, but as a tool of Western geopolitical control. They saw how the same patterns played out in Asia during the 1997 financial crisis, how the IMF demanded that Thailand, Indonesia, and South Korea dismantle capital controls and accept punishing austerity while Western investors bought distressed assets at fire sale prices.
There you go. So they pushed the Thailand and was it South Korea, was it? Into financial burdens to where, once they couldn't pay, what happened? These American corporations, as we've been telling you, went up in there and they had to sell. And they bought a fire sale, pretty much fire sale prices. When you look up the term fire sale prices, pretty much it's, it's a term that's used in the economy, for lack of better words, of Wall Street or these different corporations that run through it, and it was after a fire, whatever was left, you would salvage it, you would sell it to whoever would buy it. But you would have to sell it at a reduced price because it was either damaged or had smoke smell or whatever the case is. So you were trying to salvage whatever you could. So these people had to sell at a fire sale. So they had to pretty much sell whatever it was that they were buying, whether it was infrastructure, resources, or whatever, to the IMF, which indirectly went back to what? America, which really went back to who? The small hats, the international banking families who set up all these different banking systems around the world.
They watched as the IMF's medicine consistently seemed to benefit creditors in New York and London, while
let's go back to that. Did y'all catch that?
While Western investors bought distressed assets at fire sale prices. They watched as the IMF's medicine consistently seemed to benefit creditors in New York and London.
They watched as the medicine seemed to benefit the American creditors and London. That's exactly who they're benefiting. Why? Because the Rothschilds are directly out of London, city-state of London. It's not benefiting those countries, although the promise was, if you play game, if you play ball, if you take this loan, it's going to help build up your economy, it's going to help build up your infrastructure, it's going to help build up, the people have, they'll be able to get better jobs and be able to live a better life. But that was all the smoke screen. That was all the hook, so to speak, that they used to get the leaders to accept. And once they accept it, that's it. Who will pity a charmer that gets bitten by a snake?
While devastating workers in Bangkok and Buenos Aires, for decades, this system seemed unshakable. The dollar remained the dominant reserve currency.
Yep.
The IMF maintained its position as the central node of international financial crisis management. And
so pretty much right now, America's still trying to hold on to that dominant Federal Reserve currency power. But they see they're waning. They see that everything's going down. They're not able to sustain or have the influence, financial influence around the world. So what are they doing? Since they can't have the financial influence, they're going to just take it. They're going to use the military to go in there and just take it by force. That's what the devil does. So this is why you see Trump and the American government / military down in Venezuela, over there in Nigeria, I believe down in Somalia or up in Somalia, and other regions of the world, because it's about resources. They need resources to back up the American dollars, prop it back up and bring it back to the status they once had. That's why Trump said what? We're going to make America great again, meaning a dominant Edomite force once again. And Pete Hegseth said we're going to have peace through power or something, through strength, and I thought he had said war, but it's the same shit. Basically, he's saying we're going to have power, peace through war, even though he said strength. What the hell you think strength is? And that goes back to Daniel, the 7th chapter. you know, about the fourth beast, you know, that was a dreadful, exceeding dreadful, and um, had sharp iron teeth, and with it stamped the residue of the people, you know, with the feet of it. Just bear with me.
Nations that challenged this arrangement found themselves isolated, but something changed. Starting in the early 2000s, a coalition of nations began building alternative infrastructure. China launched the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in 2016. The BRICS nations created the New Development Bank. Bilateral currency swap agreements proliferated. Russia and China began settling trade in rubles and yuan. These weren't random initiatives. This was systematic preparation for a world where the IMF's authority was no longer absolute. The turning point came with the sanctions regime imposed after 2022. When Western nations froze $300 billion of Russian central bank reserves, they demonstrated that the international...
All right, so you know, you can watch the rest of this if you want. It's our verified voice. 6 days ago, Justin, Russia rejects IMF control, the ultimatum that changes everything. John Mearsheimer, you know. So there was a precept that I was thinking about. Ecclesiastes. Let's go to Ecclesiastes. Matter of fact, let me leave that there, back here. Let me go to Ecclesiastes chapter 8. And I'll start at verse 9. Let me see something. Start at verse 9. It says, all this, Ecclesiastes 8:9, all this have I seen and applied my heart unto every work that is done under the sun. There is a time wherein one man ruleth over another to his own hurt. And that's what these devils have done. They've ruled over another man to their own hurt, especially the Israelites. That's why in Isaiah 34, it speaks about the controversy of Zion. The Lord is coming to visit this devil, his armies, and the armies of the nations for the controversy of Zion. The things that you've done to the apple of the Most High's eye. The Israelites, us, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, and wherever in the world they're scattered, whatever they look like, but are of the seed of Israel, the real, true Israelites, not the fraud, phonies, fakes. And so I saw the wicked buried, who had come and gone from the place of the holy. Yeah, you devils are going to be buried, and they were forgotten, but it's going to be. America's first going to be destroyed, totally annihilated. You stragglers, especially you international bankers, you're going to go into captivity. You're going to serve 1,000 years of slavery, and not you at that moment serve 1,000 years. When you drop dead, you're going to be born again through one of your demonic sons, and you're going to keep procreating until you go through the cycle of 1,000 years. And after that, every last one of you devils is going to be gathered up and burnt, according to Obadiah 1:18. And they were forgotten in the city where they had done. This is also vanity, right? And this reminds me of Job, the 20th chapter. Job chapter 20, and damn, this whole thing is good. I'll start at 4. Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment? Yeah, so although you're on top, and although it seems like you're going to continue on, your power and your dominance is short. Your triumphing is only short, you know, because the Lord is going to bring you down. You know, all this wickedness you've done, shit. Though his excellency mount up to the heavens, which it has, and his head reach unto the clouds, which they have, planes, you know, helicopters, drones, satellites, space stations, space shuttles, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. So you're going to be disappeared. You know, it says, they which have seen him shall say, where is he? He shall fly away as a dream and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place anymore behold him, right? Because America has been the dominant country of the world that you conquered and that you use to conquer the rest of the world. And this place is going to be demolished. You're going to go into captivity, and then after 1,000 years, you're going to be totally annihilated. There's not going to be any trace of you, except for when we read in the scriptures about Esau. And then we could go back here. So read this last part, Ecclesiastes 8:10 in the middle. And they were forgotten in the city where they had so done. This is also vanity, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily. Therefore, the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Right, and that's why you continue on, and you think you're going to continue on. You know, you're going to go from one country, or Colombia's next, and then you're going into Somalia, you're going into Nigeria, you want to go into Iran, so on and so forth. You think you're just going to continue to conquer and bring misery on the planet, and the Lord's not going to do something to you? Are you out of your fucking mind? Though a sinner do evil 100 times, and his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it shall be well with them that fear the Most High, which fear before him. But it shall not be well with the wicked, neither shall he prolong his days, which are as a shadow, because he feareth not before the Most High. Right. And that's why we didn't get a chance to read it. Let's get it anyway. I mentioned it. I didn't get a chance to read it. Psalms 36:1. It says, "Oh Yahweh Bashem Yahushai rebuke." That's 38. Wrong. A little too fast. There we go. It says, "The transgression of the wicked saith within my heart that there is no fear of the Most High before his eyes." Right. And that's pretty much what we see. You know, Esau has no fear of the Most High. They are the wicked. You have wicked among Israel, you have wicked among the nations, but Esau, the nation of Esau, they are the wicked. It says, "For he flattereth himself in his own eyes." Yeah, you see that. You know, whose look was more stout than his fellows, had a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, until his iniquity be found to be hateful. And you're coming up in memory, up into the heavens, because it's the time of your judgment. No, your sentencing is almost up. It's about to go down. You know, you're about to be totally destroyed. The final showdown. The words of his mouth are iniquity and deceit. He has left off to be wise and to do good. Right, because you do have the scriptures. You said that when America was established, it was supposed to be established upon Judeo-Christian principles, according to the scriptures, but you never applied that. You only applied certain things that benefited you, but then when it came to doing justice, you did the opposite. And you used the scriptures, you used your manipulation, your military, your deception to put hell upon the people of the world. So let's go to Isaiah 33:1. It says, "Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled." This word spoil means to rob, steal. "And didst treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee." Yeah, so you've been a terror to the world. And then you have the nerve to call somebody else a teacher to the errorist. What is that? The word treacherously is the word bagad. To act treacherously, deceitfully, see, deal treacherously. You promise everybody in the world, you know, and the only one that benefits are really Amalek, the small hats. You get a little crumb, and they get the rest. So it says, and didst treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled, and that's what's happening right now. You're starting to feel the pains of being spoiled. You don't have the power and the sway and the influence that you once had. And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee. And that's what's happening right now. The Most High is a just power. The Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is a just power. You know, and you're going to slide in due time, matter of fact. Because the Lord set you in slippery places. Okay. I think this is dealing with Jake. 32, 35. Just bear with me. I haven't gone to this in a minute. Believe this is dealing with Esau. Let me see, because I haven't gone over this in a minute. This also applies to Jake too, because Jake eventually became moles and all of that. They were brought back. They became like a no people. But Deuteronomy 30:7 says that these curses are going to fall upon our enemies. It says, "For their rock is not as our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges." Yeah, this dealing with Esau and the nations. "For their vine is of the vine of Sodom, and of the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. The wine is a poison of dragons, and the cruel venom of asps." Yeah, that's why it says that the nations are drunk of her wine, and therefore the nations are mad. "Is not this laid up and stored with me and sealed up among my treasures?" Yeah, because the Lord is going to destroy you in due time, and you never considered your latter end. It says, "To me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time." So your foot is going to slide in due time. Why? Because the Lord put you in slippery places. Let's go to Psalm 73. Just going to go straight to the point. Right. Psalm 73:18. "Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castest them down unto destruction." So pretty much, you're going to be brought down into destruction quickly. How are they brought into desolation? In a moment. Because it's only going to take an hour for the Lord to destroy your whole empire. They are utterly consumed with terrors, because the destruction that's coming, the second death, which are the nuclear missiles, the lake of fire, is going to be horrific. "See, as a dream and wonder waketh, so, O Lord, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image." So right now, the Lord is starting to raise up to Esau. That's why, you're seeing the allies of America, so-called European allies, coming against America. Keir Starmer condemned the actions of America, Trump, down in Venezuela. He called it shameful. One of the words he used was shameful. Shameful, spewing on that glory. "Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins." So going back to Deuteronomy 32:35, "To me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand. And the things that shall come upon them make haste." Yeah, so you're going to be destroyed. Believe it, trust and believe that. "For the Lord Yahweh shall judge his people and repent himself for his servants, when he seeth that their power is gone, and there is none shut up or left. And he shall say, where are their gods, their rock in whom they trust?" Yeah, where's your demonic gods? Stand up now with your enchanters. See if they can save you from the impending doom that's coming. "Which did eat the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offerings. Let them rise up and help you and be your protection. See now that I, even I am he, and there is no power with me. I kill and I make alive, I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand." And once you fall into the hands of the Lord, it's a terrible thing to fall into the hands of the living power. You're going to be done, finished. "For I lift up my hand to heaven and say, I live forever. If I whet my glittering sword," what is the glittering sword? The missiles. "And mine hand take hold on judgment," and that's what's coming. This is why we're giving you the sentence. We're reading you the sentence, and the Lord is going to bring the judgment. "I will render vengeance to my enemies and will reward them that hate me. I will make mine arrows drunk with blood," missiles, "and my sword shall devour flesh, and that with the blood of the slain and of the captives." Right. So America here is going to be totally annihilated. You're going to have Jakes here. You're going to have, which are servants. You're going to have Edomites. You're going to have politicians. You're gonna have rich people here, and they're gonna all be destroyed by the missiles of Yahweh Bashem Shai. And the Lord said that His Spirit is going to be in those missiles from the beginning of revenges, upon the enemy. All right. Now here it says, "Rejoice, O ye nations, with His people." When you read it, the word "with" is not in there. That's why you see it's italicized. Rejoice, O ye nations, His people, because Israelites were scattered all over the place. When you go to that, you're going to see that the word "with" italicized, there's nothing there, which the word "with" is "I'm." The word "with" is "I'm," but you also have the word "I'm," which means people, His people. I'm wa, His people. So there's nothing there because it's that shouldn't be there. And I don't know if any of the other Bibles would say that. Nope, they all got it wrong. No, they got it wrong. Right here, this one's decent. "Be glad, O you His people over the nations, for He will take payment for the blood of His servants." This is perfect. "And will give punishment to His haters, and take away the sin of His land for His people." See, this is why you have to go to other translations. You got to go to the Hebrew, the Greek, to be able to get a better understanding. And there's more on this. So Lord's will, I may come back and do more. Matter of fact, let me read a little more. Important clarification: economic hitman is not an official job title. It is a critical or activist term, not a formal economic concept. Some economists argue the term oversimplifies complex developments and debt issues. Others believe it accurately describes debt-based influence and modern imperialism. All right. So I said, after the economic hitman fails in his mission, what is a jackal that follows the economic hitman? In the economic hitman framework from John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman, a jackal is the next more aggressive step. In simple terms, a jackal is someone who uses covert force, like coups, like in Venezuela, assassinations, like Noriega. What did they assassinate Noriega? Well, they got Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, or destabilization when economic pressure fails. See, so they didn't take the money, so now they got to put the pressure on militarily. How it's described in that narrative, according to Perkins, economic hitmen try first, push debt, loans, and economic leverage, try to get leaders to comply peacefully. If the leaders refuse, jackals are sent in. They may organize and support coups, encourage regime change, cause political instability, in extreme cases, arrange assassinations made to look like accidents. Yeah, and that's what they do, and they've been doing that for the longest. So you think that you're gonna get away with all this? This is why when you see a nation that has natural resources, you see like coups and destabilization of the economy and of the government and protests and all that. A lot of times, America is the one behind that, funding both sides through the international banking families. Important clarification: jackal is not an official role or job, right? Because it's off the books. It's a metaphorical, critical term, not a proven organizational title, right? Because you're not going to come out and say, well, this guy here, he is a jackal. But you do have these individuals that assassinate people, whether they're snipers or whether they are organizers. Many historians and analysts say some U.S. and foreign interventions did involve covert operations, but Perkins' framing is simplified and controversial. He was actually there. He was actual economic hitman, and he was privy to all of them different, scenarios and situations. That's why he was able to speak on it. Just like Thurman what's his name? Thurman, CIA pilot that dropped the beans or spilled the beans on how the CIA is the one funding or bringing in drugs into America. Others argue it reflects real patterns of Cold War era intervention. Examples often cited by supporters of the idea: overthrows throes of leaders who resisted foreign economic pressure, mysterious deaths of anti-Western leaders, CIA-backed coups during the Cold War. And everything, all the framework is there. All the evidence is there. It says, one sentence summary: in the economic hitman narrative, a jackal is a covert operative who uses force or destabilization when debt and economic pressures don't work. And that's exactly what they're doing, in Venezuela right now. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.